council meeting of Monday, April 10th, 2023. It is now 8:04 p.m. I would ask that everyone rise so that we can do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Madam City Clerk, can you confirm that we have a quorum?
Yes, Mayor, we do have a quorum this evening. In chambers, we have Councilmember Wolfley and Mayor Adams, and virtually via Teams, we have Councilmember Esteve and Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you, City Clerk. At this time, new business, we would like the introduction of Ordinance 0-5-23 and Resolution R-25-23. Staff will introduce the fiscal year 2024 budget ordinance and capital improvement programs for fiscal years 2024 through 2029. City Manager?
We need the motion to introduce.
Okay. I will entertain a motion at this time to accept the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. At this time, we will turn it over to, all in favor? Please respond with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
We finally got to you, City
I
Manager.
appreciate that. City Council and residents in Bowie, especially the folks on Kingsfield Drive. Now, this is my 7th budget with the City of Bowie. Time flies, but this is going to be the most interesting one, I think, and very important. I'd like to go through I'm going to go through a letter that I wrote to the City Council and the residents, which is a 18-page document that's at the beginning of the budget. But I won't go do the whole thing, but I'm going to highlight it so everybody can understand what we're doing here today and what we're about to launch into. Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council of Bowie, I'm pleased to submit a review for your review and approval the proposed budget for fiscal year 2024. This budget reflects the guidance provided by the city's various planning documents, recommendations from the city staff, and my professional assessment with regard to what is necessary to deliver quality services to the residents of Bowie. The general fund for FY 2024 equals $76,296,000. This represents an increase of $7,276,000 or 10.5% over the prior fiscal year. This increase reflects a slight reduction in the transfer from the equipment acquisition and the capital improvement programs. This amount includes a transfer of $2,388,000 to the equipment acquisition fund and $2.5 million to the 6-year capital improvement program. The Water and Sewer Fund has a proposed budget of $17,520,700, representing a 14.7% increase over FY 2023, primarily due to capital spending. I would like to move and to highlight to Roman numeral number 8 in our budget and pick it up there with the city services. Providing reliable and efficient services has always been one of the hallmarks of Bowie city government. The city of Bowie recognized this when it identified outstanding public service as one of its core values in the 2016 strategic plan. Now, what I'd like to do, just for the general information, to make sure everybody understands all the services that we provide, but But just a little bit of a personal note. When I moved from Georgia in 2011, I wanted to live in Prince George's County, but I wanted to live in a neighborhood that had nice houses with garages because they didn't have those in College Park. So when we looked around, but we wanted services that would be delivered by cities because we know that cities do services better than counties. And so we picked Bowie because of the services Bowie delivers, and I'll read some of those services to you. City of Bowie provides animal control, communications and outreach, concerts, development review planning, economic development, emergency management, full service emergency management, green buoy, leaf collection, mosquito control, park maintenance, the Bowie Police Department, which is nearly a third of the budget, recreation, recycling collection, rental housing and property inspections, small business assistance, snow plowing, special events such as Bowie Fest and the Memorial Day Parade, stormwater management, street lighting, that meaning installation and maintenance, street sidewalk maintenance and trail maintenance, trash collection twice a week, and recycling, water and sewer for 7,900 customers, yard waste collection weekly, Wednesdays, youth and family services for counseling of children and families, recreational for facilities such as ball fields, the city gymnasium, ice rink, museums, parks, playgrounds, skate park, and the senior center. That's an extraordinarily large amount of services that are delivered in a quality fashion. Looking at page 9, we will look at the revenues. The budget, as presented, reflects a 5-cent increase to the city's real property tax. During budget discussions with the City Council in January of 2023, the city manager advised that the forthcoming budget would be presented with a tax increase to fund the anticipated expenditures. Previously, planned increases to the property tax rate were deferred from 2019, 2021, and 22, and FY23. City staff intends to present a planned property tax increases in the future budgets as well. Further increases of 5 cents will be our plan for 2025, the same for 2026, and FY 2027, and 2028 and 2029. Now, understanding that each year in January, the city manager gets guidance from the mayor and city council, and that those proposed tax increases could change or be eliminated. Our expenditures, if you read down to the bottom of that page, the expenditure trend for the past several budgets has shown that our expenditures for the city of Bowie significantly exceed our revenues. This is expected to continue in FY 2024 and the budgets for 2025 through 2029, even with the proposed tax increases in future years. While the prior decisions to expand the police department, add a call center, issue debt for the Bowie Iceplex, fund required stormwater improvements for the general fund, and maintain an excellent level of service to communities that have benefited residents, we have also contributed to the opposing relationship between our expenditures and revenues due to the challenges of trying to maintain property tax rate at a limited level. So in sum, we've been using the fund balance for the last several years to balance the budget using money that was saved or in reserve. If you go to page 10, I'd like to hit this rather hard. We label it spiraling inflation. This is a situation that exists today in an exceptional fashion that did not exist in the prior 6 budget presentations that I've been involved in here in Bowie. The country is experiencing inflation at a level that has not been seen since the 1980s. An inflationary spiral is a situation where rising prices exceed higher wages, which in turn leads to further price increases, creating self-reinforcing cycle. When this happens, the cost of goods and services increase at an accelerated rate, and the purchasing power of money decreases. This can create a significant challenge for local governments as they struggle to maintain service levels and meet the needs of the communities while grappling with the rising cost of labor and materials and supplies. Operating the city of Bowie in an inflationary spiral can have several impacts on the budget. For one, the cost of personnel and benefits needs to rise as employees demand higher wages to keep up with the cost of living. Without that, the employees will seek other opportunities. Just as an aside, one of the most difficult challenges for this administration right now is recruiting in a situation where there's a 3.5% unemployment rate, and that's very difficult. The cost of materials and supplies also increase as manufacturers and distributors raise their prices to offset higher production costs. This can lead to a situation where the cost of providing essential services such as road maintenance, capital equipment, waste management, capital improvements, and public safety become prohibitively expensive, straining the resources of the city. In an inflationary spiral environment, it is challenging to balance the needs of maintaining service levels with the needs to ensure that there are adequate resources to operate. Bowie has been seeing the impact in multiple areas. One of the most notable has been the supply chain, where low supply has impacted the city's ability to get capital equipment and driven up commodity costs. In FY 2023, the budget included new electric vehicles to replace aging vehicles in the city's fleet. During this year, staff has found that the vehicles that it intends to acquire are simply not available and have very long wait lists. Additionally, a trash truck that used to cost $200,000 now costs $300,000. And let me say, we simply have to have the truck since we maintain 18 trucks and we deliver, in my opinion, the best solid waste and recycling services in the region. A project to upgrade our AV system here in the chamber has been on hold for the last fiscal year, despite over 90% of the equipment being in. The critical central component is simply on back order due to high demand, and we have no option but to wait. As the City Council has been approving bids of various projects, the bid prices have regularly been exceeding the cost estimates developed for the budget over the last year. We expect that 80% of the bids that come in during FY 2024 will come in higher than estimates because of inflation, even though we have used all the professional means at our disposal to get the estimates correct. What we cannot control, and what Mr. Powell is trying to do, the Fed, is trying to get this inflation rate down from 8 or 9% to below 2%, and its impact on us is often unpredictable. As staff seeks to new price estimates, professionals are offering higher estimates, increasing contingencies, and expressing the difficulty in committing or to forecast future prices. We will continue to adjust our cost estimates and do the best that we can. As I mentioned earlier, personnel expenses section of the budget is essential because high level of services to our community and its expectations. And the way we deliver these services is by having highly motivated and well-compensated employees. And we have 2 union contracts that we're working with, the ASME and the Fraternal Order of Police, and we are competing with everybody in the region for the same employees. If you would turn to Roman numerals 12, we'll talk about some of the personnel. With regard to staffing, there will be 1 additional person I'm requesting. This is, it's only 2.5, I believe. We're looking for an additional person, project manager, to work in in the Housing and Grants Department. The reason we're doing that is because every time we get federal funds, and we've been successful at that, somebody has to manage the particular dotting the i's and crossing t's associated with getting these funds. Also, we have some housing requirements that are going to be coming in with Melford continuing to develop and South Lakes. So that person will be working for Mr. Buggs in managing the affordable housing components of both of those projects and helping them do so. We're going to be adding a half of an FTE. I'm proposing to add a half FTE to our Emergency Management Department office. And as you all know from past years, last year in particular, with tornadoes and microburst storms, explosions in buildings, and of course, COVID-19, one of the most important offices, non-departmental offices, but to our operation over the last 3 years has been the emergency management operations. Also, we're adding a one help desk lead person to our IT department. IT, believe it or not, is only the last 15 years has only gotten 2 additional people, but the job has grown tremendously over the last 10 years, and so that's the bulk of what we're looking for here in new personnel. We're going to be doing some adjusting, and the term is stratification, is which we allow people to move up within a certain category, professional category, and it helps us with retention and training and keeping experienced people on board. One significant, if you look at Roman numeral page 13, the Allen Pond Park note there. What we intend to do there, looking at all things that are presented in front of us, we're looking to replace the amphitheater singly by itself and find a prefabricated product, and with the intent of doing that significantly cheaper, and so we'll be paying for theoretically the demolition of the theater and the placement of the prefab. We hope to do that for $1 million rather than the millions when you look at what the original plan was for Allen Pond. That's my proposal. So if you could go to page Roman numeral 15, and I'd like to talk about general funds future. The city of Bowie is prosperous and financially stable community. The strong and growing property tax base has enabled the city to offer consistently great service over the years. Its successful residents have high and growing median household incomes, which further the city's ability to provide services through strong income taxes. As Bowie has grown in population, it has enhanced its services through the construction of a gymnasium and a senior center. Expanding its city hall, Bowie has added a police force, a 911 center, without adding an additional tax rate, despite the project needed for this expensive additional services. The state of Maryland mandated costly responsibility to the government to improve the quality of stormwater in Bowie, and this cost has also been absorbed by the city of Bowie without any change to the property taxes. However, the city's general fund balance has been declining. The general fund balance is projected to be $37,371,000 by June 30, 2023, down $4.9 million from the prior year. This fund balance enables the city to make up the remaining shortages in revenue over expenditures, and the proposed budget for FY 2024 uses $7,835,000 in its existing fund balance to level the budget. Understanding that one of the things that we do better than most is that the staff, we really focus on our on how we spend our money down to the lowest level, and that helps us consistently underspend our projections because we take really care when we're conducting the operation, we pay close attention to what we're spending money on. So I'd like to wrap it up here, and then we can, but I'll talk about our conclusion here on page 17. As we look back in the past year, we continue to emerge from one of the most challenging periods in recent history. COVID-19 pandemic has continued to have a significant impact on our community. We see it in the supply chain challenges, inflationary pressure, and a very strong in the labor market. Despite these challenges, the city of Bowie has remained strong and resilient, and our residents have continued to support one another through these difficult times. The FY 2024 budget is a reflection of our commitment to maintaining and improving our municipal services for the benefit of all residents. We recognize that the economic uncertainty caused by the pandemic has created additional challenges for many residents, and we have worked hard to ensure that this budget is fiscally responsible while still meeting the needs of the community. I'd like to thank H. Byron Matthews, the Finance Director, his Assistant Director, and his diligent staff for all the work that they've done, and of course the Department Directors and Assistant Directors for going through the scrutiny of preparing this budget over the last 2 months. We are confident that this budget represents a sound and financial plan that will help us continue to provide great services to our residents. As we move forward, we know that there are still some challenges ahead, but we remain optimistic about the future of our community. We are committed to working together to ensure that Bowie continues to be a great place to live, work, and raise a family, and we look forward to working with the City Council to review this financial and programmatic plan and continue to serve the residents of Bowie. Mr. Mayor, thank you. That's my presentation of the budget. I'll hand it back over to you.
Hey, thank you so very much, City Manager. At this time, I would like to declare the public hearing open. City Clerk, do we have anyone speaking?
Yes, Mayor, we do have one person signed up to speak tonight. And also for the record, we did receive 2 comments via email, which will be part of the record for this evening's meeting.
Thank you. I would have you back on the bill, Bob. Rap says, you know, by now I should have this done. Rapsinski, right? Rapsinski.
Wrap your chin on the sky.
Rapsinski. All right.
Okay.
Thank you so very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Go right ahead.
I had to tease with you on that. Mr. Mayor, City Council, Mr. City Manager and staff, I'm Bob Rapchinsky, President of the Huntington Heritage Society and the owner of historic property in Old Bowie. Come to talk about the Huntington Heritage Society is requesting that funding for the improvements to the Bowie Railroad Station to be included in the 2024 budget. Over the past several years, a number of improvements part of this project have been implemented in Old Bowie. Heritage Park construction of the bridge path to the railroad buildings are a plus for Old Bowie Huntington, but we want to see the project finished. Fielding plan for the improvements to the railroad area has been approved for many years now. It will add so much to the museum complex, relocation of the caboose, viewing platforms, and educational plaza will help to make the museum a place where people and school groups will want to visit. Bowie history begins in Huntington City, the birthplace of Bowie. This project should be a showplace that highlights that history. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, I will declare the public hearing closed. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor, please respond with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same favor. Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. We will now go into the budget work session, number 1. So I will turn it over to city staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I'm going to hand it over to the Finance Director, Mr. Matthews, to present our general fund revenues and CIP.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. H. Byron Matthews, Finance Director for the City of Bowie. There are 2 sections here, the introduction and the policy narrative, that City Manager Lott has covered quite well, and I won't waste your time to repeat those items. So what I would like to do is to go directly to the revenue section on page 33 and talk about our proposal for FY24. On page 33, what you see is the real and personal property tax in our first section. 42 million .1 is the request in that section. That represents about 61% of the total revenue budget. As you can see further down, that increase is largely due to the increase in assessments and also the 5 cents per $100 of assessed value. The next section I would like to talk about is the assessed value. As you can see, it has grown from 8.3 billion to 8.7 billion in the proposed budget. And that is what our revenue items are based on. Page 34 is a summary of all of our special taxing districts, which we pull the assessed value for all of those commercial properties that are listed in those stormwater management districts and determine how much we need to collect to cover the cost of their operation. So that's kind of a detail of that. And on page 35 is...
Pardon me, Mr. Matthews?
Yes, sir.
Quick question for you on the rates that we have there. If we wanted to expand the efforts that we have on those ponds, specifically at our last session, we saw the green team was in here. We're talking about improving the landscape using native plants that would both help with the aesthetics of these ponds as well as the potential for improving their efficacy as well. What is the process for change in this? Do you recalculate on an ongoing basis each year? I know we have fund balances for each of these, correct? So if we wanted to do something, we could expend and then adjust the rates the subsequent year. Is that correct?
Yes, we calculate the cost of the operation of the ponds each year. It takes into consideration what those operating expenses will be. Those estimates are provided to us by staff, and we determine what that rate is. Any improvements to that will allow us to maybe increase the look of the facility if we desire to do so. But the cost that we're displaying here, Councilman, is just the actual cost of operation to maintain the pond and all of the future dredging that the pond will require.
That's at present because we don't have any plans for any other improvements. But if we wanted to make improvements to the ponds to include native landscaping to improve both appeal and effectiveness of the ponds, then that would fall into each of these categories, correct?
That's correct. There would be additional operating costs for each one of those categories that we would then have to gross up the rate in order to capture that cost.
And right now, each pond has its own established value in terms of accrued revenue in anticipation of expenditures down the road, correct?
That's true. These values are determined by the assessed value of the properties on.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't think we need to do anything yet, but my expectation is that when we get some, pardon me, some understanding of how the pilot program is going with the native species, tests that we're doing, I think it's over, not at Midwood, but over by the pool at that pond, then we may want to expand, in which case we'd want to perhaps in the following year increase the rate to cover the expected costs for those upgrades. So we'll leave that for out years, but thank you.
Okay. On page 35 is a further analysis of the real property tax covered on page 33. We show here the assessed values and how that tax rate is calculated. The personal property tax rate is normally 2 times the real property tax rate. So as you can see, our current rate is $1. The proposed rate increase would make the personal property tax 1.3. The next thing I'd like to move to is page...
Another question for you on page 35, since before you skip on.
Okay.
The hotel and motel tax, how many hotels do we have that are paying into that?
It's 4, sir.
4. Are we able to, I know the county collects it and shares with us.
Yes.
Are we able to determine which hotels are providing how much?
No, sir.
All right. All right, fair enough. And so therefore, we don't really know, although we did just add 1 new hotel this last fiscal year, correct? Over at Melford, we just had a new open.
That one has not come on board. I have not
Okay.
seen anything from that hotel yet.
All right, very good. Thank you kindly. And then the next item on page 35 is looking at the licensing fees. I see that the actual for 2021 to 2022 was $425,000. Then it dropped to $390, and now we're expecting it to be about $300. Can you speak to what's driving that that first decline and now a flat rate on that?
Just the activity that we're seeing, Councilman. I think in FY22 we were getting caught up on a lot of the inspections that were done. I think now we're seeing that kind of level out, and that's our observation of the account.
Okay. Did we take a hiatus during COVID in terms of inspections?
No, I don't think we took a hiatus. I think just the way in which the inspections were done through the last fiscal year, that we probably did a lot more, but I didn't want to use the word hiatus because I know those folks were diligently doing inspections during the COVID period, and Nick is here and he can maybe reflect on that. But we did increase those inspections during FY22, thus the dollar amount indicates.
So have we had a decrease in the total number of rental properties, or have they stayed flat?
They've stayed flat.
They've stayed flat? Okay, thank you.
If we can move to page 37, where we talk about the next highest percentage of revenue that the city collects, and that's our state shared revenue, which is made up of our income tax revenue, our admissions and amusement tax, our motor fuel tax revenue, police protection, and a corporate tax that we collect. That's $16 million of revenue that we're proposing in FY24. The next major section, if we could move through page 38, is charges for services.
Quick question for you on 37. The estimated for 2022-23 for income taxes
Yes.
was off significantly from what was budgeted, from 12.1 down to 11.4. Is there anything that indicates why we'd be expecting to go back up, or is there any insights onto that?
Well, we're looking at the actual growth numbers that we're getting from the state, and that reflects our number for FY24, and we see an increase in the collections for FY24 over our estimated collections for FY23.
Okay. And then the, well, never mind, I see that Allen Pond costs are still flat. All right, thank you, or revenues, I should say.
Grants and other local units, those monies from the county, mostly the next two sections there, relate to the youth and family services, and then our rebate for our landfill, and the financial support that we get from park and planning for Allen Pond. On page 38, we talk about our charges for services. That's mostly our gymnasium and our parks and our ice arena. We're expecting a small increase to 1.3 million in FY24. That represents 2% of our total revenue collection. On page 39, Councilman, we talk about fees and fines. The biggest piece of that is the cable TV franchise fee that we collect, which is basically 5% of the revenue. That section represents 3% of all the revenue collected for the proposed 24 year. The next section is all of our other revenues that cannot be identified in any other categories. Our interest income, because of the current market, our interest income has been very favorable over the last 9 months, so we're in good shape there. We anticipate that carrying through maybe to mid next year until interest rates start coming down. But that's the revenue that we receive off our idle cash investments.
Quick question for you on that. We are invested in bonds, correct?
We're invested in the state's local government investment pool, and it has a variety of things that they can invest in, all basically at market price, secured, and collateralized at 1.2%.
All right, thank you.
So on page 40 is kind of a summary of all of the revenue sources. 67,957,000 is the total revenue that we'll generate. We have a transfer of revenue from the Water and Sewer Fund of $503,700 that will give us total revenue generated of $68,460,700. We're expecting to use $7,835,300 from the fund balance for FY 24.
Quick question for you on that, on page 40, where you have appropriated fund balance. You have estimated for 2022, 23. Is that truly going to be zero?
For 23, we basically don't show in this section a use of the fund balance. It would normally be basically a profit or loss or a reduction in revenue, so it'd be like a deficit more or a profit more. So in this category, we don't show use of the fund balance in the estimated year. But if you go back to page, go back to our summary, find it right quick for you. If you go back to page 12, Councilman, you will see how much of the fund balance we anticipate using to your language, which will be $4,926,000, as opposed to the original $10,163,000 that we initially planned to use when the budget was created.
You said 4.9, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
The next session, Councilman, and Mayor, is the city's rental and user fees schedules. These schedules are reviewed by the departments obligated to run these facilities. That's mostly community service and public works, as well as some cost figures here. We have available a list of the proposed changes, which are minor, and we can pass those out to you and make those available to you. But in the essence of time, I think that we should probably just come through the pages and understand that there's really no significant changes. There are some variables, but nothing that is worth lifting at this time. Should you have a question about any of those changes after reviewing the documents, we'd be more than happy to address them.
Yes, I actually have a quick question right now, and it's more at the macro level. Can someone speak to utilization rates at our various facilities? Is there any place that presently that would suggest that there's overcrowding or lack of capacity? I would suggest that, generally speaking, if we don't have a capacity issue, that the rates are probably fine the way they are. But if we have some capacity issues, that we might want to raise rates on non-residents to free up a little bit more capacity for residents.
We haven't had any capacity issues reported in the last year. And I think the rate increases that you all did several years ago have helped to manage that. The only overcrowded position we had was at the gym. But that's been mitigated by one, the membership requirements. Well, people who don't live in the city can't get memberships. They can get passes, but they don't get memberships. And that has minimized the overcrowding situation.
Excellent, thank you.
Councilman and Mayor, the next section that I'll be covering is the Capital Projects Fund, and that's on page 171. Capital Project Fund works in conjunction with and is not the same as Capital Improvements Program, CIP. The CIP is a 6-year plan which the council adopts in the form of a resolution authorizing improvements in acquisition projects. The current budget year portions of that plan may be funded by amounts appropriated from the annual budget ordinance. The Capital Project Fund receives appropriation for projects that serve governmental purposes and are not accounted for in the enterprise fund, such as water and sewer. So on this summary page, we're trying to show to you our actual revenue collected for the capital projects fund, which last year was $623,866,000. This year's budget was slated at $13,393,400. We're estimating that the revenue that we're going to collect this year, using part of the fund balance to balance this fund, is going to be $300,600. The proposed budget for FY24, excuse me for that typo there, that should have been 2023-2024, will be $13,357,600. That will be divided between the other revenues, intergovernmental revenues, general fund transfer, and the use of the fund balance of the fund. As we move to page 172, we can see that the appropriation of the fund balance, that's how much we're actually going to use, that's within the capital projects fund, is $6.9 million. The transfer needed to fund projects for FY24 from the general fund is $2.5 million. State grants, we're proposing to receive a little over $3 million. And then we have our revenue sources from interest income, and we try to allocate that interest income over the projects that we're doing in the fiscal year in order to provide funding for them. So that's covered on page 173. So that's a total revenue expenditure and revenue and a revenue of $13,357,600 for FY24. On page 174 is...
Pardon me, quick question
Yes.
for you. Back on 172.
Okay.
Last entry, just actually second from last entry, state grant, it says 43,110.
State grant.
Land acquisition open space, is that funded by state grant or is that from our revenues? I thought we had...
It is two categories, Councilman. Part of that comes from the annual transfer that the city does. The other part is from the POS money that we receive from the state. We cannot use that to purchase any particular item of land that we're looking for unless we go through the criteria of 3 appraisals and it gets approved by the state. So in this particular budget, we actually have about $74,000 that we can use to buy any particular parcel of land now. But if we want to tap into the state money, there is regulations that we have to follow, and it all has to be pre-approved before we can spend that money and then request reimbursement.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
But the 1.4, that money already exists?
Yes, it's allocated to the city of Bowie.
Okay, very good.
Yes.
And it's being held at the state level?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, gotcha. On page 174 is the expenditure appropriation, and it shows you all of the projects that we plan to engage in FY24. And as you can see, that's the total amount of revenue that we collected as well. On page 175, we give you just a little more information about what goes into those particular projects and how the money is going to be spent and what the money is being spent on. That also flows over to page 176. That covers all the the appropriations and the capital projects. I will leave it there because Mr. Lott will cover the capital projects in much more detail, starting on page
We'll start 199.
199, okay, table of contents. If there's no other questions, I'll pass that off to Mr. Lott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. If you look at page 199 of our budget book, which is, in my 25 years of being a local government guy, this is the best reference material, also that functions as a budget document I've seen. But on page 199 is a listing of all of our projects and potential capital improvement projects. And I'll proceed, and I'll start on page 205, and Mr. Wolfley stole my thunder a little bit when I was going to talk about it, land acquisitions, but I'll go back for folks who don't know or not familiar with this. Funding has been identified for the acquisition of open space areas in and around the city. The amount available for the fiscal year 2024 appropriations provided by prior year transfer from the general fund of $55,200. Current year appropriations for the capital project fund is $21,000, and the state program open space POS fund is $1,499,600. The POS fund can be used up to 100% of property acquisition costs. Normally, a maximum of 50% of the city's POS allocation may be used as a 75% match for parks development costs. The POS program has stringent process and pre-approval requirements that Mr. Matthews mentioned, which must be met before qualifying expenditures are made. Therefore, for the FY 2024 budget, the only amount available for immediate disbursement is $76,400 from the general city revenues. Just a little history here. This program was first authorized in the budget 8081 with an annual base amount of $50,000 transferred from the general fund. When the city, when the Bowie Commons property was purchased in 81, the annual lease revenue now is $21,200 a year, was earmarked for land acquisition as well. So if you go to page 206.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lott,
Proceed.
for Pope's Creek, funding for expansion for that could come out of here?
The money that we,
Unless it's land purchase, this we're actually talking about purchasing land. Yeah.
What-
it didn't qualify. Has to be pre-approved. Yeah,
we acquired that property with
city.
city money, sir,
Is
from
there-
last year's budget.
Is there a reason why we couldn't have used open space?
It had to be pre-approved.
Got it.
It had to be pre-approved, and this was a target opportunity to
Absolutely.
acquire the property, so we can.
Understood. Any improvements, can any improvements be made to any property that's been acquired through the open space program?
Yes, sir. It can. However, there is a pre-approval process where the city submits a letter with a predicted or estimated program ahead of time. Those programs ultimately have to be approved by the state before we can engage in any development or improvement activity.
So my first thought is on the Pope's Creek, we got we have property there now, and when we get to that particular item in the page 263, we can talk a little bit more. Does that mean we could also make some use of this at Allen Pond?
That is correct, yes.
All right, thank you.
So then, for those who know, Nick Spurgeon is the Deputy Director of the Community Services Department. So if you look at page 206, you'll see that the transfer for FY 2024 is $1,526,000, and that is $1,449,000. If you look further down, $600 is comes from the state, $764 from our general fund. Any other questions about that? If not, we'll if you look at 207, the senior centers there, we don't have any money appropriated for that action this year. And on page 209, there's the Ken Hill Center. We have no planned expenditures for this year there. And we move to page 211, which is the Emergency Operations Center. The purpose of this project is to design and build the Emergency Operations Center at City Hall, where management decisions are made and coordinated responses are orchestrated relating to emergency incidents or disasters. It will be equipped to provide staff support to key city decision makers in coordination with and in guidance with in the prevention, preparedness, response, mitigation, recovery phases of an incident that threatens safety, security, and the operation of city functions. The EOC, Emergency Operations Center acronym, will provide city staff with a secure location with adequate communications and technology for command and control during any disaster, emergency, or large scale. Now, the Emergency Operations Center got awful lot of use in the last 3 years with COVID-19 and the other weather disasters we've had. And this project was authorized in fiscal year 2020. Now, when you look at page 212, you see that we are at the construction phase, $200,000. And when you look down at the bottom of page 212, which is a funding summary, you'll see that we've got $100,000 from the state of Maryland and $100,000 from our general fund, and that's a bond bill that we got a couple of years ago, wasn't it? Yeah, so, any questions about the Emergency Operations Center? If there aren't any, then we'll move forward. The Hermel House, we have no appropriations for that this year. When you look at page 215, City Hall, the City of Bowie at City Hall is a 66,000 square foot, 3-level municipal building that provides administrative offices for city manager, police, IT, finance, community services, planning, and planning departments, and also communications, grants, and other people in city manager's office. Additionally, the building provides the mayor's office, city council chambers, and several public meeting rooms. We are planning to spend $35,000 this year in this project. Looking at page 216, you will see that we intend to the police department records and renovation room renovation for $35,000. That's been in the planning since last year. They were looking at the A&E on this, and we're expected to be in a position to actually finish the renovations. And you'll see that all $35,000 of those dollars come from the general fund.
Quick question, Mr. City Manager.
Sure.
On City Hall, there have been discussions about security improvements.
That's about
Thank
3
you.
down the road.
Thank you very much.
And yeah, it's going to be well, anyway. I mean, we're, with what's going on in Louisville and Memphis, well, anyway, that's a long discussion, but, all right. So, looking at 217, we have no plans for the gym for this year. We do have something planned for them in 2025. We have nothing planned for the Welcome Center in this year's budget, nor the genealogy library. We do have on page 223 energy efficiency improvements. This project provides for the development and implementation of the energy efficiency improvements on city facilities or lands. The study was completed evaluating the feasibility of installing renewable energy technologies on city-owned facilities. A priority list of future projects was established, and this will be an ongoing project until that satisfies Goal 6 of the strategic plan of the city's energy efficiency and conservation strategy. So that's planning for $50,000. If you go to page 224, you'll see that we intend, our objective is to install a 2-tier EV station at City Hall, $20,000 and a retrofit of lighting at the ice arena and skate park for approximately $30,000, total of $50,000, and all the money's coming from the general fund. Any questions about that? Okay. If there aren't any questions, we'll talk about fiscal security, which is what Mr. Wolf asked about a moment ago. The City of Bowie is committed to the safety and security of its citizens, visiting staff working in all city-owned facilities. Steps have been taken to identify safety and security risk and determine appropriate solutions to address the gaps. This project will address prioritized solutions and provide security in the form of new physical security hardware, security technology, video, surveillance, monitoring, and visitor management systems. If you'll go to page 226, we were pushing forward with this project with quite a bit of vigor, and then we were stifled by COVID-19. And the committee and this project was sort of set aside as we dealt with that. Well, as we come out of COVID-19, we have revitalized our security committee, led by our emergency management director, and we intend to look at physical security improvements in hardware, closed-circuit TV, and visitor management systems, access control systems, alarm system, and other systems for the city. And we're looking to spend at or below $500,000 on this particular project, and all that money comes from the general fund. I'm certain, Mr. Wolf, you have a question or two on this one. We're ready for you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the commitment to it, because I do know we've been talking about it, and I know we've had the COVID situation. So from the standpoint of rollouts, do we have a plan in terms of physical locations that get prioritized? Is it going to be, for example, this building, then others, or is it going to be based on type of security that's implemented perhaps across the board, and then the next level of security implemented across the board?
We intend to make the priority being City Hall. Mm-hmm. You know, it's sort of like World War II, Europe first, right? Yep. So we're going to focus on City Hall first, but we're also going to look at access to the public works facilities, Ken Hill, parks and grounds facilities, and determine just what level of access that we should have in those places, and then what we can do to make all of those facilities safer, and the people in those facilities less vulnerable to these bizarre attacks that are going on all over the country right now. And so, but we've just revitalized the committee. Mr. Cornwell is a hard-charging fellow. I suspect we'll be back to you all within the next 3 months with a detailed plan for your approval on what we want to do. I mean, we ought to have some sort of well, let me since we're talking about it, and this is budget, this is work session, right? So when I went to COG, went to a meeting at COG once, and there was a person standing at the desk, and it was my job to get past this person, get to the elevator, and go to a meeting. And I told the person, I'm Alfred Lott, I'm going to a meeting, and he said, okay, fine. And he directed me to a kiosk. And I went to the kiosk, and the kiosk required me to take my driver's license out and insert it in, sort of like you do with the passport at the airports these days. And then once I print, then a pass was printed for me. All right, so one, they knew who I was, and so somebody had taken a look at me, and there was a gauntlet, but maybe not the most stringent one. But if something happened and I was a part of it, they would at least know who I was. And so that would have been a deterrent for me to go in there and do something untoward. But the reality is that guy, based on that entrance, he knew everybody who was in that building at one meeting. And so this is the sort of thing we might want to consider of course, the decision for that, the level of it is up to the council. We're going to make recommendations, but that'll be one of the things we'll be considering as far as people coming into City Hall. And now we don't want to restrict anybody, but we just want to know who it is and then take it from there. But like I said, we're still working on it. We'll be back with a recommendation, and it'll be up to the City Council to make approval. That's it.
Excellent, thank you. I know it's a difficult thing to secure the workforce in the workplace, I should say, in this world. And it's doubly so when you're a public-facing organization, when you're a local government where accessibility is the name of the game as well. So I look forward to seeing the plans and the balance that we can strike on that. So thank you.
Great. Any other questions about?
If I can,
go ahead.
yeah, if I can jump in real quick on this, Mr. City Manager. I've been very resistant to any changes to procedure or security because I've been a long believer that City Hall should be as accessible as possible. I think, recent events, persisting as they are, I think we have to change our approach. And so I certainly endorse, the security protocols along the lines of the ones that you described. I would emphasize, though, to the point of Councilmember Wolfley about striking a balance, I do think it's really important that we try very hard to make sure that whatever that process is, it takes, security into consideration, but it's also as streamlined as possible for residents. What I never want to hear residents say is, well, I try to go to pay my water bill or have a meeting or, talk to animal control, but, I felt like I was jumping through hoops just to get in the building. I want to make sure whatever we do, it really is as seamless as possible and as intuitive as possible to residents when they come in. If they have to give IDs or get a printed badge, fine. But I want to make sure that it still remains very customer friendly and customer focused.
Well, like I said, you all will get to approve the final product, and but the reality is, I think in the last 12 months, there have been 145 mass shootings in this country, so we just can't ignore it. Anyway, any other questions about that? But we're off to the races, and we got the right man in charge. If that, we'll proceed with the street resurfacing on page 227. This is an ongoing program provided by throughout the city, where the city currently maintains 193 miles of streets. This program provides for the expenditure for paving and other improvements related to projects, including sidewalk maintenance. The money goes for, all streets are resurfaced with a hot mix of asphalt. Main drives are generally resurfaced with 1 and 1.5 inches a layer of mixed hot out asphalt. Main drives carrying heavier volumes are located where more trucks are present. They get 2 inches of asphalt, and so forth and so on. And if you go to the next page and you look at 2024's line, you'll see that $1.9 million of the $2,555,000 is for resurfacing roads. Complete Streets, which is on Ken Hill Drive at 197 intersection, there's a $570,000 planned for that, and for consulting services that the Public Works Director and his team uses is another $30,000. And of course, there are 3 things you got to do in a city. You got to pick up the trash, pave the roads, and you got to have police, right? So this is one of the big 3. Any questions about our street resurfacing efforts?
Absolutely, thank you. A couple of things. The first is, do we have or could you share with me the lists of the streets, kind of the prioritization of where we are in terms of what's coming, what's been done recently? I think we got a list for this year, and then if we could show me a list for what's coming in the next year or 2, that'd be great.
Mr. Mayor and council members, my name is Jose Aldayuz. I'm the Director of Public Works. One of the things that you see repeated in the budget is consultant service for maintenance planning, and that is an asset management program that the city has acquired. and keeps track of all the streets and the paving programs starting in fiscal year '23. So we actually have a physical GIS map that shows all the streets and the condition of the streets. And based on that, we'll plan future future fiscal year work. In direct answer to your question, sir, I have a list of the streets that I can share with you.
Excellent.
But I'll also, I'll give you I'll send an email, the map, so you can see how much we have progress in terms of planning the work for our assets.
Wonderful. Follow-up question. We finished in Heather Hills, we finished the water main replacement, and we're starting in Kent Hill in that section there. Obviously, there's a lot of roads, not a lot, but there's a fair amount of roads. Well, in part of Heather Hills, there was some pretty extensive digging and replacing a pipe which affected the street surface. What is the plan for managing the street resurfacing in concert with pipe replacement?
That's a very good question, and we have a very excellent superintendent. And some of the streets that we were about to do this fiscal year, they are going to be postponed until that work is done, so we don't have to go there in twice. Both the utility superintendent and the street superintendent are working together to coordinate the efforts, so the residents don't get disturbed, and the pavement of those streets is going to be done immediately after the work of the pipe replacement is done.
Wonderful. And on the issue of gutter repair and replacement, is that done out of this same fund, or is that a separate fund?
When we got concrete work, and that's the good thing about this asset management tool that I was talking to you about, because also it gives us the ratings for the curb and gutter and also for sidewalk. So we have a visual description of the assets, transportation assets that we have, so we can coordinate the work. And again, the objective is to not disturb the residents many times.
Okay. Well, I want to, first of all, commend you, of course, on the good work that you guys did for Heather Hills. I was talking to a constituent over in that area, and they were well pleased with the progress that had been made, the completion of the work, but also the way it was done, and that they understood that the need to dig and cut and trench and do all of that kind of stuff, but they did say that the vendor did a good job, and your department did a good job managing or minimizing the level of impact on the residents. So thank you there, and appreciate the good work.
Thank you, sir.
Well, you know, Mr. Wolfley, the last thing, as an old public works director, the last thing you want to do is put in a new street and have to dig it up and replace the pipe. So we're certainly going to stay on top of that one. So the next one would be page 229, which is a sediment control Maryland Science and Technology Center at Melfort. There are several what can be referred to as special tax districts. This is one of them. The Maryland Science and Technology Center Melfort Stormwater Management District consists of 2 wet ponds. It is anticipated the upper wet pond is Pond A. If you look at the picture on page 229, will need to be cleaned in FY 2021. Excuse me, in FY 2100. I didn't say that right. At a cost of $9,518,254. The lower wet pond B will need to be cleaned in FY 2064 at an estimated cost of $13,507,038, 507,038. Reserves will be set aside in each year in anticipation for these dredgings. And the funding for this project is provided by a special task district where 95% and general revenues 5%. If you'll go to page 230, you'll see that over the years, we put a certain amount of money right. Last year was 126,300. This year is going to be 132,400 as we get ready for the work that is going to be done in the years that I mentioned. Any questions regarding the Maryland Science and Technology Center at Melford?
Yes, quick question for you. Is there, I mean, these numbers are astronomical. The good news is they're way out there, and inflation will take care of this. Will be end up being about the cost of a car in today's world. But is there any alternatives to a long-term replacement? Is there, for example, intermittent maintenance or improvement that might be less expensive instead of waiting all those years to go do a complete rework, maybe a partial dredge or clean in the interim?
We can definitely look into that. To be honest, I'm not aware of any ideas to that effect. But intuition tells me that that could work. But I said could and not would work is because I don't know the mechanics of the watershed and the type of soil, so I'm not familiar. But if the city council and the city manager asked me to do a study, I'll be more than glad to do that.
All right, thank you.
Councilman Wolfley, just to add to that, we do analysis of the special taxing district ponds every 5 years. So if something needs to be done in a more expedient time frame, that dredging analysis would let us know.
My only thinking was maybe, doing $10 worth of work now might save $100 worth of work later, as opposed to waiting for the big bill. It may not. If there's value in it, great. If not, that's fine too.
I'll make a note of your comments, sir, and we'll talk it over with the engineers, and maybe at that 5-year mark we can have some sort of analysis done, or see what the latest technology, the latest ideas, civil engineering ideas are with this particular suggestion.
Thank you.
All right. So with regard, the same type of situation exists with the Bowie Town Center pond. It is anticipated that the stormwater management pond will need to be cleaned of sediment in 2115. And of course, reserves are being set aside for that action too. And if you look at page 232, we are setting aside $61,000 this year, $57,600 last year, and so forth, as we look at spending that, maintaining that property at an appropriate time. The same situation exists with High Bridge, which is which we are not participating. We're not collecting any money so far. High Bridge stormwater system consists of a wet basin and wetlands, and a survey was completed in 2018 and found that the sedimation was limited, and so therefore cleaning was deferred to 2068. And now, of course, we'll all be still working then, all right, and re-elected and all that sort of thing, right? So, sediment control, Gateway Center. Once again, there's $40,300 set aside for that. The Gateway Center, formerly called the International Renaissance Center, Stormwater Management District, consists of a drainage channel and a wet pond. The project is scheduled for dredging in 2026, and annual accumulations, or if you look at page 236, we are accumulating $40,300. Last year was $36,900, and until we actually do the work. Similar situation in sediment control, Covington, which is $30,100 set aside. It is anticipated that the pond will need to be cleaned of sediment in 2102 at a cost of $4,782,200. Funding for the project is provided by the Special Tax District, Pin Oak Plaza, Elder Oaks, Carlington, and general fund up to 53%. And if you look at page 238, you'll see that we've set aside the $30,100 for that project also. The next page, 239, is our stormwater management program, which is a part of our CIP. The Public Works, the Public Storm Management Capital Improvements Program provides funding for corrective actions needed to maintain the city's stormwater infrastructure. This infrastructure includes storm sewers, storm drainage inlets, stormwater outfalls, public stormwater ponds, and other control facilities, streams, and channels. We have set aside $64,800. If you look at page 240, you'll see that Neighborhood Drainage Solutions will cost us $45,000. Consultant dredging reports, 2-year period, $19,800, and the safety turn pond maintenance at $300,000 for a total of $364,000, all of which is coming from the general fund. Any questions about that? If there aren't, we have no money set aside for the Public Works main facility, none for the streets facility, but we do have a facilities preventive maintenance fund that the council set up in 2005 to especially, and it was a really proactive action since the city has so many relatively new facilities, you know, the City Hall, the Senior Center, Parks and Grounds, the gym, and of course, the older ones to maintain also. The city has a significant capital investment in public facilities and structures. This project allows the city to pursue refurbishment and preservation of public facilities without the need to incur additional debt, which is really good. And we have $742,000 set for that. We may not use that money. Last year we used about $400,000 from the fund. But you know, these buildings are getting older and things happen, right? And this was, like I mentioned, a proactive system that was put in place by our previous council. And this year it's 742. All that's coming from the general fund. So, any questions about the preventive maintenance fund that we have? All right, the solid waste administration building, no money's been set forth on that. And good old Chesapeake Bay, I think we mentioned earlier the unfunded mandate, but here we go. The city, on December 29th in 2010, the Environmental Protection Agency established the Chesapeake Bay Total Maximum Daily Load, TMDL. The TMDL is a comprehensive pollution diet to restore clean water to the Chesapeake Bay and the region's streams, creeks, and rivers. The city has contracted with several engineering consultants and conducted the analysis to establish capital improvement plans in order to meet the MS4 water quality permit requirements. The proposed capital improvement plan lays out specific projects over the next several years to accomplish the requirement. Many of these projects are located in the Levitt section of the city, and that was developed prior to stormwater management standards being set forth. If you go to page 250, you'll see we're planning for the Pin Oak Village stormwater management pond improvements of $1,169,000. The Gateway Harbor stormwater management pond improvement, $1,072,600. The Saddlebrook Stream restoration, $27,000. and stream restoration MBMS-4, which is for $1,064,200 for a total of $3,332,800, all of which is coming from our general fund. But all these things we simply are required to do.
Mr. City Manager, quick question for you. We have this section here that we've labeled as Chesapeake Bay, yet back in the stormwater management, we had the issue with, or not the issue, but the subject of the safety turn pond. Why is that one in one location versus the other? Would that not fall in the Chesapeake Bay section?
That was under the sediment control.
On page 240, yeah, on page 240, we have it listed as a 2024, the safety turn pond maintenance at 300,000, but yet we have a separate endeavor going on for the Bay and TLM.
Yes, these were mandated by EPA, and these were the set programs that staff came up with in order to meet those criteria. So that's why we have these particular programs segregated here.
Gotcha.
Just for the Chesapeake Bay qualification for EPA.
We have many of our stormwater ponds that are not located within special taxing districts, so ones that don't have funding through a special taxing
Sure.
district get taken care of through this.
Yeah, I see your point there, Mr. Wolfley. We are, in our stormwater management project, we got $364,800, right? And the best way to say this is that, and without putting words in anybody's, is that these are the projects that we thought we should be doing in accordance with what is best for us. When you look at what's happening in 250 under the Chesapeake Bay, this is what we had to come up with to satisfy the state of Maryland.
Gotcha.
This
So
is
one
more. This is additional work. Is the best way I can put it.
So this represents 250, the Chesapeake Bay component is a compliance requirement
Exactly.
as opposed to 240 in the stormwater management, which is more of a ongoing operational.
And, yeah, and that was those were our ideas.
Okay.
But the reason why we continue to isolate them is because we have to present this to the state of Maryland to demonstrate our compliance.
Gotcha.
All right.
Thank you. Just a quick question, and I'm not sure if maybe Jose can answer this. How are we doing in comparison to other municipalities and government agencies with the mandate to comply with these new measures?
Every year, by the end of October, we have to present a report of our progress to the Maryland Department of Environment. And this is my second year that I did this. And the reviews that we get from the state are that we are doing well. That's from that end. My biggest, my biggest problem in implementing this type of project is the permitting aspects with the different agencies, especially DPI. And now we are to finish one of the projects, the design, and there's another agency that is giving us a hard time, and that's the United States Corps of Engineers. So there is, from one end, we had a mandate from the state, and from the other end, we got a lot of requirements from other from a federal agency. So that is the biggest headache. Other than that, piece of cake.
And how are other organizations, I know we're not out there reporting on them, but in the kind of in the general marketplace, how is the rest of the communities doing?
I have no idea. I had to learn this at the in a short period of time, so I haven't talked to my peers, but That's a good point. I'll check and see how other people are doing.
Yeah, I'll ask around with some of the other city managers to see how they're complying, how they're faring. I think we're doing pretty good.
The statement on hold is on target to meet the EPA requirements. There was a report that came out last week.
Any other questions, sir? Or anybody else about that? All right, then, so. Okay, we have no Southside Salt facility issues this year. No money set aside for that. No Bowie Playhouse projects this year. Bel Air Stables, nothing for this year. That leads us to page 257, which is the Allen Pond Park. And I mentioned it earlier, you know, as we take a look at our plans for Allen Pond, and they are extraordinary, and some would say grandiose, especially considering the spiral that we have with this inflation. But one of the things we simply must do is try to replace that amphitheater, because it's our other facilities, if we left them where they are, they're functional and we just have to maintain them. But we have to replace that. And so we have looked into replacing the amphitheater with a prefab facility, and we think that we can do that for around $1 million, both demolition and replacement, and that's what's programmed here. If you notice, other things are pushed out the outer years, and we think that the structure will be representative and presentable and to our standards, and we can just focus on maintaining what we have and not doing anything else. And so that's what's going on in Allen Pond. Any questions about that? So White Marsh has no actions this year. The Bowie Ice Arena has no actions this year. However, we are in the design and permitting phase of the construction for the Bowie Ice Arena. We project that that work will take, which is $1.3 million from FY 2023, will take us through FY 2024 to get it all done. And we will be in a position in FY 2025, if the council at that time wants to continue, to move forward with the construction. And of course now, and we can keep our fingers crossed and all that the numbers will stay closer to $18 million. But that's what's going on with that project. And so, any questions? If not, the Pope Creek Park, as we mentioned, we did acquire that property, and next to that park, and we're going to look at hopefully get together with the HOA over there and see what the use we can make for it. I know there are some significant parking problems on that part of town, and but we don't have anything programmed for them this year.
Yeah, this is going to be managed out of community services, is that correct?
Right.
All right. So when we get to that, maybe we can look at what our objectives
We
should
can
be.
add an objective, yes, of course.
Because it's good news that we've got the property acquired, to your point, Mr. Lott. We've got a parking issue over there. This may be a multi-tiered sort of thing where we do something temporary to provide some immediate relief, and then a longer-term capital plan or something like that. And it'd be great if there's some things we could use open space money for, if we come with a plan and we have it in advance and able to submit it for review and do it that way. That would be beneficial, I think, to all parties. But I do appreciate that, and let's definitely get in touch with the HOA over there, but also the neighbors and of course public at large as well.
Right.
To see what we can do for improving the accessibility there. Thank you.
All right. Very good. If there aren't any other questions, we'll move on to page 267, which is the Parks and Grounds Annex at Encian property off of 214. The city owns the property on Route 214, formerly called the Ensign property. This property is used for storage and staging area for Parks and Grounds Division. The site contains a combination of storage buildings, barns, and other invaluable for the storage of seasonal equipment and hard goods and in a secure location. We are planning to, for that $25,000, to build what we refer to as the A&E for a cold storage building, which would be a building that would not have HVAC and all that in it, but be a great place to store equipment, wood, metal, properties, like unto a farm storage building, and so that we can, because we have a certain need for that. That is the plan for FY 2024, get the A&E component for $25,000, with the intent to get a $250,000. All that money will be coming from the general fund. Any questions about that Ensign property? Bel Air Mansion is next on page 269. Bel Air Mansion is was built in around 1745 and listed on the National Registry of Historic Places. Offers a look at Bowie's earliest history. The mansion interprets the lives of residents from 1747 to 1950. There is a $20,000 project set forth, which is to construct a memorial garden which would be dedicated to or in memorial to the enslaved people who helped build the facility. And that's the, what that money's, that A&E would be for, and as you see later on in 2025, there's $200,000 set around for that construction of that. And in both cases, the monies would come from the general fund. But we will, in each case, one thing I want to say about the general fund usage. We are constantly looking for other monies. Just so, you know, from the state of Maryland, the federal government, and anybody else who's providing grants to local governments for this project and others. So we'll continue to do that.
City Manager, where do we stand on the replacement of the elevator?
Where is that?
It's FY 25, budgeted for FY 25.
In, oh yeah, right. Yes, if you look at the page 270, sir, you'll see we're going to do, for FY 2025, we intend to construct a memorial garden for $200,000 and construct and manage the replacement of the elevators for $180,000.
So we push it out to 2025?
Yes.
Can I ask, why has there been such a delay on that? I know that's something we've been working on for a while.
Councilman, what we actually do is go through an annual inspection process. The elevator continues to pass inspection, so it's an annual process that we've taken there. If we're directed otherwise, we could certainly engage in an activity of replacing it. But as long as it has passed the state inspection program, we've continued to defer that cost center.
So the other issue was, I guess, that this is not it's not accessible for wheelchair persons.
It meets the minimum ADA.
Minimum ADA.
Yeah, I mean, candidly, being one who's tried to utilize that, that's why we looked at this a couple of years ago, is to just make sure it's accessible to everyone, even in the power chairs,
Okay.
to be able to do that, so, okay.
Thank you.
All right. So, the next item will be the Bowie Golf Course. Bowie Golf Course is 130 acres, 18-hole golf course, managed, run, and maintained by a third party through a lease agreement with Indigo Golf Partners. Just as a history, when I got here in 2016, it was being run by managed by an organization that had managed it for years. But unfortunately, they weren't able to financially maintain it to the level that it should have, and we ended up with a backlog of maintenance. for which we're trying to catch up to right now. So we have, for FY 2024, we're planning to clubhouse structural repair improvements for $300,000, new driving range, T-box facility, $300,000, driving range, safety enhancements, lighting, irrigation, cart path, $1.4 million, tree stump removal for $60,000, storm damaged tree and debris removal for $40,000, a total of $2,100,000. And we are finishing up the irrigation system in this fiscal year, which is a great improvement. As you know, without irrigation, golf courses are worthless. So, any questions about the Bowie Golf Course? And the relations, the leadership with Indigo is working out very well. So, the next issue would be public art, which is, it's in the eye of the beholder, right? Here we go. The support of the public art is an ongoing effort in the city of Bowie through its Arts Committee that administers the public art program. The city adopted the public art master plan in 2013, and January 2013. This page provides funding for that. Currently, if you go to page 274, you'll see that the Bowie sign on Ken Hill Drive and Route 197, $25,000, and an annual addition of $15,200. That currently, the concept is being reviewed by the State Highway Administration to gain their approval or of what we want to do, because that is a public right-of-way. So, anybody got any other questions about that? Nick's involved in it in detail.
No.
All right, so nothing for Black Sox Park. There is the Bowie Railroad Museum on page 277. The Bowie Railroad Museum opened in 1994 after being moved and restored. It was joined in 2006 with the restoration of the 1926 Bowie Building Association structure next door as the Old Town Bowie Welcome Center and Museum. Today's Railroad Museum campus, consisting of Railroad Depot, Welcome Center, Tower, Caboose, Shed, depicts Bowie's earliest modern history as a railroad village. The capital improvement plan includes the maintenance and repair, HVAC systems, and roofing and implementation of several exterior improvements to substantially expand the experience of the visitors. $780,000 have been programmed for what is referred to as the Grace Fielder design implementation, which, of course, this is it's being in conjunction with the 10th Street Park and the Railroad Museum is all in one major operation. Any questions about this?
Al, this has been in our capital improvement program for a while. How many years have we deferred on this now?
I don't think we deferred this one. This design. This would be, I think, the third component.
It was out of our budget for 1 year, then put back in.
Oh, right. It was moved out for 1 year and placed back in. So we're not that far out, but we're in a position to get it done now.
Was this the project where the permits were ready to go and the hope was that we wouldn't have to go back to the square one with permitting?
Yes.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, team.
Any questions about that particular project? Thanks. All right, so Glen Ellen Park. Glen Ellen Park is a 9-acre park with 2 tennis courts, softball field, soccer field, youth soccer field, and children's play area with family picnic pavilions. And this one, we scheduled $55,000 to be a part, to renovate the tennis courts, repaving, restriping, to include pickleball striping. Any other questions about this particular facility? If not, we'll move to the indoor court facility. The indoor court facility has no money scheduled for this year. However, I will mention that it's pushed out to 2026 for the A&E and permitting for the new court facility because the construction of the new court facility is planned to be at Allen Pond Park, contingent on the demolition of the current ICE facility. All right. So, Bowie Trails on page 283. The Bowie Trails, the city completed an inventory of the conditions and rating of the city's hiker-biker trails. A listing has been prepared of trails which in need of repair. This is an ongoing program to maintain, repair, and safely modify the city's hiker-biker trails. We have $598,000 set forth to put bituminous trail repairs and replacements along Northview Drive for $76,000, Pin Oak Parkway Trail Extension Design, $252,000, Jericho Park Trail Segment Construction Completion of $170,000, and Wayfinding Plan of $100,000. Any questions about this particular project? The next would be then Centennial Park. Centennial Park is the park behind City Hall, 20 acres, located behind the city, that offers walking trails, outdoor fitness stations, and this page provides various park improvements for enhancements necessary to maintain parks and to meet the needs of its users. In FY 2024, the original fitness stations will be replaced. And we've gotten estimates for the replacements of this equipment. But we found that we needed to add to the cost so that we could get the same caliber of fitness equipment that we have currently rather than something basic. And so that's what this program is set up for. Anybody have any questions regarding that?
I do. Do we have any evidence that anyone uses the outdoor fitness stations? Because I got to admit, you know, in my own neighborhood and in many parts of the area, I see outdoor fitness equipment along trails and other spaces, and I never see it being used. I'm just curious. Do we have any evidence that this is something people actually want or care about?
Yes, we've actually, we're planning on doing some replacement of equipment at Allen Pond. There is in this part of Bowie, a significant participation rate. The equipment that's going to be placed there is going to be quite modern. Some of the equipment is going to be more of what you would see in an indoor gym facility, rather than the outdoor fitness. You know, we all have seen the pull-up bar type elements. This is going to be more cardio-based machinery. Most of them are made by playground manufacturers nowadays. It's pretty cool equipment.
And I'm sorry, I'm gonna put you on the spot, Nick,
with the
but
surveying, I'm sorry, yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, the surveying that we did at Allen Pond called for specifically for this type of equipment.
I've seen people from my vantage point, you know, since the parking lot and my windows there, I've seen several people working out there on those facilities. And people like to run up and down our steps in the back and do the rocking thing, you know. But I've seen quite a few people using the facilities.
All right,
Yeah,
fair enough.
I would say, Councilmember Stev, I actually use all of those facilities myself, the one at Centennial, as well as I'm guilty of running up and down the back steps.
Well, no one's going to argue with the good shape you're in, Councilman Gardner.
No, that would be you.
I rest my case.
No, that would be you, Councilmember. That would be you. You're in great shape.
As we move forward on that, I would like to make sure, and again, as an advocate, that all of these things we're looking at are making sure that they are accessible.
Mayor,
all-
our team is looking specifically at ADA elements for each of those zones throughout this trail back here.
Excellent.
Yes, thank you.
So now, we do not have anything in the budget for Tanglewood Park for 2024. So that's maybe something you all might want to propose to change, but it's up to you all. But the next proposal for me would be the racetrack road property. This
So
is,
sorry, before we move on to racetrack road for Tanglewood team. So in our last meeting, it sounds like the city was leaning towards either option A or option B for Tanglewood. Do we have an upcoming meeting to follow up on that? Because I know that you guys had a few more. I know that there was another more outreach that was going to be conducted. So at what point would it be appropriate for us to make a formal recommendation in our CIP?
yeah, we got a schedule for May the 1st to come back.
Okay, does that give you an adequate amount of time, though, to include that in a CIP?
It's, I think so. I mean, we don't approve the budget till the 15th. So we have
Okay.
time to add it, and if you all approve it.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Or, I mean, I guess we could bring it up during your session too.
Yeah, so that item will be brought up under consent agenda, target date of May 1st. I believe they're leaning towards option B, the parking in option B. So our team can certainly go back and look at what the AE cost is going to be. We did the master plan. Now we're going to have to do a more technical engineering exercise to get us bid-ready documents to move forward with construction. So we can certainly look at that between now and May 1st and provide some solid numbers for you.
Yeah, that sounds right, Nick. And in conversations with stakeholders, it sounded like the consensus between staff and stakeholders was the parking option from Plan B, but all the other features of Plan A.
Correct.
But we can talk more about that at the next opportunity.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Right, I thank you, Mr. Mears. I was just informed that with the conclusion of the General Assembly, that the racetrack road, there was an extension of 1 year as to when we would take the property. So, is that what you meant?
Yes, end of 2024.
Yeah, end of 2024. So, so technically, that means we should move everything out 1 year. So I won't even bother with that then. We'll retool that and adjust it. Well,
Okay.
Mr. City Manager, do I understand correctly that $100,000 was made available by the state for an environmental study to be conducted before the transfer of the property? That would be in this coming fiscal year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we need to make a note to pursue that particular fund and to pursue the process of, I mean, essentially, is that a budget discussion or is that something we need to talk about in a future meeting?
I don't think that's a budget discussion for us to have at this point. But we will verify, since the action was just happening, we'll see how it all papers out and what the governor signs to make sure that we're prepared for the upcoming fiscal year.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
Well, Mr. Mayor, that concludes the review of the project from the general fund, and I believe that concludes our work today. Right? And that concludes the work that we presented to you all for the night.
Mr. City Manager, going back to the elevator improvements at Bel Air Mansion, I wanted to come back to that. If I recall, the issue with the elevators specifically, and I think the mayor mentioned this, it does not fit a large class of existing electronic. I don't know the proper term, but there's a large class of wheelchairs that it does not accommodate. And my understanding is that we would accelerate the replacement of that elevator to make sure that we were making Bel Air as inclusive and as accommodating as possible. I would ask that we push that particular project up a year. I understand that in that case, we're following minimum ADA standards, but given that, we have people who cannot access the building today because the elevator is not adequate, I would ask that we push that up a year if there are no objections from any of my colleagues.
I have no objection to that.
Councilman, we did some design elements for a different solution. One of the challenges with the mansion is the shaft. The elevator shaft is designed, it's an old historic building without some significant renovation work that is much more extensive than the project that is listed in the capital page. We would be blowing through that. So anyway, the solution that the engineer came forward with was an exterior elevator. It was completely outside of the current structure. Certainly, we can go back and look at those documents and bring those back to council with some revised cost estimates based on inflationary rates or influences, and take a look at that.
Understood. So if I understand correctly, then the issue isn't just the elevator itself, but the shaft itself would have to be completely rebuilt. And so it sounds like your engineer is saying an exterior design is the most workable solution.
Correct.
For 100% accessibility.
Yeah, and
but
whichever
there are many more costs associated with that.
I'm sorry, yes, sir. And whichever solution ultimately we go with that is exterior still has to go through the historic review processes with the county. So there's their input that we would need to obtain and work the plan with them.
Okay. If I could ask that we could do that process now and at least get some information, and if it turns out that we're looking at another year of studies or whatever the case is, that's fine. But I'd rather that we move that process forward. To at least start looking into that and getting some data. I'd appreciate that. And again, if my colleagues have no objections.
So then
None at all.
if it's a consensus of the council that we look at, some way to accommodate the larger wheelchairs or the motorized chairs, and then because without trying to modify the shaft, which would probably be out of our price range, but doing it from the outside, and what I suggest we do is we add a CIP a page specifically for that and start the A&E component of that in fiscal year 24 to see what it would cost, what it would take, and so that we can plan for it and to see if it's we'd have to how much money we need to set aside to do it. And then continue to maintain the one that we have, since it's a working elevator, and then look to see what we would take to replace it with an exterior elevator.
No, understood. I appreciate that, Al. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, as I said, Mr. Mayor, your work's done tonight, sir. Thank you very much from our perspective.
Well, I'd like to say thank you to city staff. I'd like to say thank you to city staff. As always, you do a great job of preparing the budget and getting us going on it. I think I'd like to say thank you to those who listened and went through this with us. Also, I'd like to thank my colleagues for always doing a diligent job and being a deliberative council as we move forward with that. Having said all of those things.
One other thing, sir. Work session number 2 is next Monday, the 17th, and we will beat up on the Public Works Department and do the water and sewer divisions. That'll be next week.
I truly look forward to that. Thank you. Having said that, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, I guess we don't have to.
I like that.
I guess we just go because it's a work session. Hey, thank you again, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, everyone.